Sugar, sugar, sugar. It's in our favorite snacks. It's our late night cravings, and it feels like we just can't stop. I mean, we've all been there. One bite turns into 10, turns into 20, and before you know it, you're left with an empty plate and a whole lot of regret. You need to get a grip. You need more control. But what if I told you that that feeling of being out of control around sugar was not about a lack of willpower, but it may be something else that your body is trying to tell you? My name is Jo, I'm a dietitian, and I've struggled with binge eating for a big chunk of my life. I tried all the diets and all the solutions, but nothing seemed to work because I would end up in the same place again and again and again. Now, it took a while for me to get to the place where I'm finally able to say no. Now, don't get me wrong, I still eat my favorite sweets, but I'm not saying no out of fear, and I also get to say yes because of what I want, and not just because I feel like I have to have it. Now, if you feel that way too, then you are in the right place, because in this video, we are going to be talking about the strategies that I have implemented in order for me to finally beat my sugar cravings. But hold on. Before we talk about these strategies, I think it's important for us to talk about why we crave sugar in the first place. Some food for thought. Now, the thing is, cravings are often a sign of your body trying to tell you something. But instead of listening, we dismiss it and we just kind of get angry at ourselves. Oh, I finished this whole box of cereal again. I'm such a failure. I have no control. Now, what could it possibly mean if you are craving sugar? Is it that you are weak? Is it that you have no discipline? Or could it be something more? Now, there could be many possibilities, but here are some that I'd like to share. We are not eating enough. What? I'm pretty sure I'm eating way too much, which is why I'm constantly craving sugar, but it might actually be the opposite. See, when you have cravings, it's usually your body trying to tell you that you need food. Now, because you're not eating enough, your body's going to try to get you to eat enough by sending you as many signals as possible to tell you to eat high-calorie foods or sugar-rich food items because they are quick energy sources. Another possible reason is that you're not eating enough carbohydrates. We're usually told that if you're craving carbs, it means that you're eating too much carbs, but actually it could be a sign that you're not eating enough carbohydrates. And similar to what we mentioned a while ago of not eating enough, if you're not eating your primary source of fuel, your body's going to look for it, usually making you crave more of these decadent, rich sugar foods. In relation to that, it could also be a blood sugar concern. Now, we have a hormone called insulin, which is the one that often leads those sugars that we consume into the cells in order for it to be used. It's kind of like the key to the door of the cell. Now, most blood sugar problems is usually insulin resistance, which means that no matter how much insulin your body pumps out, it's still not able to do its job, which means the sugar that you're consuming is not actually going into the cells that need it, making your body think that it's not eating carbs or sugar at all, so it's constantly sending signals for you to want it more. So if you have PCOS or diabetes and you're constantly craving carbs, that's usually the reason. And another one is a lot of restrictive rules. The more rules you place around food, usually the more you end up thinking about it and even wanting it. Like, me and my sisters went through a 30-day no sugar challenge, but ended up eating all the sugar that we missed out on the 31st day, plus more. So while you may think that setting up a new diet is the best thing, it might end up backfiring. One of the biggest factors to endless sugar cravings is not eating enough. So you have to set yourself up for success by establishing a consistent meal pattern. I used to be so afraid to eat that I would push back my hunger as much as possible, or I would only eat when I'm super duper hungry. But you realize that the hungrier you usually are, the more full you end up getting because it's so much harder to satisfy hunger when it's at the extremes. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I used to be so afraid of eating breakfast to the point that I would skip it. And then I'll notice that after lunch, I get snacky, I start grazing through all of these food items. And when I started to have a more regular meal pattern, that kind of disappeared. A consistent meal pattern also helps us front load our calories, which can be very helpful in regulating our blood sugar and our appetite. One thing that we are always taught is that hunger is a bad thing and you should suppress it as much as possible. Or it means that hunger is a good thing, because if you're feeling hunger, that means you're not eating. Diet culture, you know? And one of the things I had to learn to make peace with is that hunger is not a bad thing, but it's a way of your body communicating with you. No longer being able to feel your hunger and fullness cues is not the goal. And it is definitely great to be able to manage cravings in a way that you're not feeling those intense cravings anymore. There's a difference between not feeling cravings and completely not feeling hungry. And that is usually a sign that we have to reassess and reconnect with our body's cues. I'd like to recommend eating within the first 2 hours of waking up and then every 3 to 4 hours after that. But that's just a baseline until you're able to develop your own patterns. So good. There actually have been studies that front-loading your calories or eating more of your energy needs in the first part of your day can actually be very beneficial to blood sugar levels and appetite regulation. I personally find that when my meals are placed earlier in the day, I'm able to be more mindful and also more energized for what I need to do. So before you start cutting out food items, let's start by addressing our meal patterns. Now, before we get into the next ones, don't forget to subscribe. Pair carbs with protein and fiber. A reminder I will never get sick of repeating, carbs are not bad. It's an energy source, it's delicious, it keeps us fueled. It's not something that you have to be afraid of. But one thing that we do know is that all carbs turns to sugar. What? But sugar is not inherently bad. It's just that all carbohydrates, when broken down by your body, turns into glucose, which is technically a saccharide, which is a sugar. But that's exactly what your cells love to convert into energy. We are looking for more stable blood sugar levels and energy in a satisfying meal. Instead of being afraid of carbohydrates, we focus on pairing it with protein and fiber. One of the biggest misinformations about controlling blood sugar is that you have to stop eating carbs. But just cutting out carbs is a band-aid solution to the main problem, which is that your body doesn't know how to process it. So we have to give it the environment and the solution to be able to do that. If you just cut out carbs, yes, your blood sugar will never spike, but if you happen to have carbs one day, your body is not going to be able to manage it. But if we follow a strategy that teaches our body how to properly utilize carbs and giving it carbohydrates in the correct amount, our body will start working with us. And we can do a whole other video talking specifically about balancing your blood sugars if you want to. Notice if you have a meal with just bread. While it is a great energy source and probably going to be delicious, probably going to get hungry maybe 30 minutes to an hour later. And that's because while it provides us with the energy we need, it's a quick source of energy. How do we slow it down? By pairing it with protein and fiber. Protein is one of the most satiating macronutrients because it's the hardest to digest or the slowest to digest. This usually means that the gastric emptying, which is the emptying of contents from your stomach into your intestines, is slowed down. That leaves you feeling more full and satisfied for longer and slowing down the release of the carbohydrates into your bloodstream. Sources of protein would be your chicken, beef, pork, but also plant-based sources like tofu, legumes, lentils, nuts, and seeds. And also we have dairy and eggs. Now, fiber is actually a type of carbohydrate that your body can't digest, which is why most sources of fiber is going to be carbohydrate sources. But because you can't digest it, it also slows down the release into your bloodstream and also keeps you full for longer. Sources of protein would of course be high fiber carbohydrates, fruits and veggies, legumes and lentils, and even nuts and seeds. So pairing your carbohydrates with both protein and fiber is literally the combination trio to make those meals extra satisfying, but also manage blood sugar levels much better. And that will help us manage blood sugar rises and cravings. We have our meal here, rice and a creamy chicken with bell pepper and zucchini. As much as possible in meals and snacks, I try my best to pair those carbohydrates with protein and fiber. By the way, it's perfectly fine to have carbs on their own as well, but just as much as possible, let's balance it out. If you have a craving, go eat it. We are making some s'mores. I've had a craving for a while now, but we hadn't had the ingredients, and now we do. Chocolate, marshmallow, graham. I put it in some foil. I hope this works. This is one of the statements that changed my relationship with food. This will always be there tomorrow. How much do I want right now? You know when you have a craving and you push it back so much to the point that when you finally give in, you end up going overboard. That's usually what happens in our scarcity mindset when we tell ourselves we can't have something and we finally let ourselves have it, it goes all or nothing. Take this bar of chocolate, for example. You probably think that I should never have chocolate throughout the week because it's bad. And then on the weekend, you're probably gonna end up eating the whole bar because you just wanted a bit or your cravings got too intense. And then the F it mentality comes in, which is I already had one, why not have the whole bar? That is exactly how I used to be with all of my cravings. The more I pushed it back, the more intense it got, and the harder it was to satisfy, making me feel like I was addicted or obsessed. I used to be a big subscriber of the out of sight, out of mind. If I never see it, then I will have control and nothing will go wrong. But why is it that every time that food showed up, I would end up eating so much of it until I felt uncomfortable? See, out of sight, out of mind works for some, but if it's in your sight and then you go out of your mind, then it doesn't really work. And then I started having chocolate. 1 to 2 pieces a day to satisfy that sweet tooth, until I started thinking about sweets less and less and less. I can have this chocolate now, but I can also have it later, or tomorrow, or any day. There are no rules, there are no restrictions. I can satisfy my craving. And while that may seem scary and feeling like you're gonna go out of control, it most likely will happen in the beginning, but over time, you're finally gonna be able to listen to your body. Because it's no longer something that you have to eat urgently. It's something that you can savor and enjoy. Now, don't get me wrong, we definitely have our impulsive cravings where you're scrolling online and suddenly you buy a whole box of pizza and you realize you weren't actually craving a box of pizza. But before we get to that point of understanding when it's impulsive and when if it's true cravings, we have to first allow ourselves to satisfy those cravings. One thing that we're often looking for when it comes to food is choice. And if you feel like you are constrained to the choice of having to say no because everybody is constantly telling you that this food is bad, you're not allowed to eat it, you're going to usually want it more. But when you have a choice to say no because you're not in the mood for it, but you can also say yes because that's actually what you want, you're really able to ask yourself the why of reaching for that food. And you're able to give yourself permission to eat it if you really want to. The topic of sugar addiction has been heavily discussed in the scientific community, and the thing is that it's so hard to quantify. When we're talking about being addicted to food, we're usually talking about those sensations that we feel, those neural pathways that it lights up when we eat something crunchy or something sweet. And yes, food does release that dopamine effect when we eat it. There's just so many factors that we have to consider when it comes to sugar addiction. Psychological, social, and environmental influences that play such a big role. A lot of that addiction feeling to food usually is related to food fixation or food preoccupation. It's the constant thoughts about food that overtake your mind and you feel like you have no space for anything else. And yes, at the first few days of giving yourself permission, it will kind of feel like you are going overboard. But you have to give yourself that time to find your balance again. Now, I'm not saying that your feelings are invalid if you feel like you're being controlled by sugar, but labeling sugar as addictive usually oversimplifies a more complex and nuanced topic that relates to the nature of food choices and emotional connections that we have as humans to food. Understand what the heck your cravings mean. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Now that I have my matcha, we can continue. Something that I really want to emphasize is the fact that we are often told that our cravings are something that we should be scared of, that it's our weakness. But what if we turned it into a strength of actually getting to know your body better? So something that really helped me was to deep dive into the moments or the biggest moments that I tended to crave sugar. Some of the things that I learned is that I tend to reach for sugar when I am bored, when I am tired, when I'm feeling emotional, when I'm about to get my period, when I'm stressed, when I'm extra hungry, when the food that I ate did not taste good, when I skipped a meal or a snack that day, or sometimes I'm just looking for something new or something exciting in that day. I find that it is less about avoiding your cravings and more about leaning into it. One of the things that we can look into is when we are most often looking for sugar. Is it when we're bored? Is it during emotional moments? Is it when we're trying to procrastinate? When we're tired? When we're stressed? When we're hungry? When we've skipped a meal or a snack? There are so many possibilities, and it also differs on the day-to-day. But the way to find a solution is to first figure out what the true problem is, when controlling yourself might not actually be the solution that you need. But I think a matcha is definitely the solution. And lastly, you may be getting tired of hearing this, but I am never going to be tired of saying it. You have to be gentle with yourself. Again, this is the hardest thing to do when it comes to tackling any sort of strategy and working on your relationship with food or your body, because we are not taught to be kind to ourselves. So we've really forgotten the importance of our own self-talk. It's not just about discipline and willpower. It's also about unpacking your relationship with food so that we're able to tap into what's happening. It's also getting to know what other physiological things are going on that your body is trying to send you signals of that you have to get to understand. I mean, it took me years to get to a point where when I'm faced with a box of donuts, I don't feel like stuffing my face with all dozen right away. Beating your sugar cravings is not about never having cravings. It's about knowing where they come from and being able to address it. And that is how we beat our sugar cravings. Not by doing another detox or cleanse, but by understanding our body and giving it consistency. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, don't forget to subscribe and please give it a thumbs up because it really, really helps. Also, comment below what other things you want to see. Till the next video, you always deserve to eat.
The video's over, but that doesn't mean you have to go. You can still subscribe or watch another video. Thanks for watching.